So very important lesson that God has shown us in this case, the case of me, is that when we look back at social media, females would see my picture, okay, and they would say, this guy looks like more handsome than Tyrese. Back in the day, I had a picture with a blue kind of beanie or whatever those things are called, okay, hat on my head, right, for the cold winter weather, and they would say that to themselves that this guy's more handsome than other guys, but he doesn't look rich and he doesn't look conformist, okay, and he's has a certain posture that reflects that he's a really good guy, and he's sad, and that he hangs out with thugs, okay, his profile, that picture, okay, it's like if you saw Belle from Beauty and the Beast, okay, hanging out with some kind of gang or punk rock group, okay, but without the tattoos and so on and so forth, just ever so slightly having symbols of allegiance to that group or showing that they're part of that group, okay. I used to compare it to having a Lamborghini with a little dust on it. If a female doesn't say, hey, I'll take that Lamborghini with a little dust on it for free rather than that old worthless bicycle, okay, that has, some kind of cute little, fuzzy wuzzy thing on the handlebars or something, okay. It was really outrageous to see them reject golden heart, golden character, because I was a little bit sad. This was a very potent message from God to the world, that it was very wrong for the governing class to order people to confuse that message. It was very important that they understood that there was all these attractive women, all these people who claim to go to church, these people who claim to be from various cultures, they claim to be compassionate liberals, even back then, hippies, so on and so forth. And only certain types of them were the type to say, hey, I'm going to respond to this guy. People who graduated, because this was in my 20s as well, people who graduated college with degrees in psychology and sociology and marketing, and people who worked at corporations and were used to seeing different types of people. People who are thinking people who are dumb people who are sluts, people who are groupies. Then the word is basically shunning me overall. They weren't responding. When they voted for Obama for president, a lot of people saw him as pretty much the pinpointed normal. Not racist, not scatterbrained too much, okay? Fair to a certain degree. They saw him as, hey, this was some kind of godsend without being a holy person per se. Of course, he said he went to church and so on and so forth. So he had a lot of things were, normal, and where normal and moral overlap to create the pinpointed normal. In fact, I would venture to say, and I know a lot of you don't want to hear this, is that a mixed race person is more likely to be pinpointed normal than other races are. Part of it has to do with what happens, and I know a lot of you don't want to hear this, but you'll have to forgive me, it has to be said. What happens when dominant traits come together, right? What traits are dominant? For whatever reason, historically, to some degree, the dominant traits tend to be traits that make you a better person. It's the model of nature or something. If the dominant traits don't allow a life form to progress, it goes extinct. Okay, so positive evolutionary traits. Things that allow me to be fair with people. Some people have tribalism as a problem. They have a racial pride chip on their shoulder, and they don't even consider themselves racist most of the time. But they date according to their own race, and they favor their own race. This is very, very common. So women were looking at the ideal traits in somebody. They were looking at the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon, who by the time I was 17 or so, okay, could beat everyone at sparring. And even if I couldn't, I would have made those adjustments quickly. And by the time I was 18 or 19, I would have been able to beat them all at sparring. That's why they caused the car accident to occur back then. They set that up. I'm 100% sure when I look back at it and who was involved and exactly how it happened and what happened after that and who called me about it and so on and so forth. They like to show the signs of that. So that's that. So when we look at, I'm going to use again, you have to forgive me. I'm going to use what comes to mind. The example of Hispanics, right? We see a gang member trying to conform himself. We see it often. he's working in a job or something, and he seems irritated. We see the occult Hispanic, and we see the good-hearted gentleman from the field, the migrant worker. Some of them have a really good heart. There's paintings. I have a painting of one of them. I still believe on this property right now. Okay, he has a certain hat on. He's a certain way he's carrying himself. His certain pride that is mixed with humility to a pretty fair degree. And again, to some degree, they are mixed, right? Native, indigenous people and Spanish and so on and so forth. So of the Spaniards who came, some of them were more reasonable than others. Of the indigenous people, some of them were nicer than others and so on and so forth. Okay, so we see a spectrum emerge. It's just the way we see a spectrum with the workforce. So society has a similar judgment as females in general in regards to human worth, right? They say things like, he's out of or she's out of your league, so on and so forth, or he's no good. They say, don't date him, he's no good. Your parents will never approve. Okay? So how are things kind of put together? Well, remember, I'm the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon. I grew up listening to gangster rap and Bay Area rap and hip hop and so on and so forth. People who put a lot of thought into their words, whether they're pimps, hip hop artists who are poets, whether, and I listen to my parents who are doctors and their network to some degree, and hanging out with gangsters who, take a great pride in having insight and being perceptive, being sharp, okay, being clever. I was listening to the clever and the wise and everything else. And I'm looking at this thing, I'm saying, okay, what is human worth? Why do females date a certain way? Because I had an intense romantic prerogative. I spent so many hours and hours and hours and hours searching for love, trying to communicate with people, going out to the club, going to the mall, to the park, cruising, you name it. Females did not appreciate. The simple answer is most people are racist on a spectrum. And they're also culturalist, okay? If a Lamborghini has a bumper sticker on the window, okay, of, it says vote for Trump and you're a Democrat, would you not take it for free? Okay, you say, I'm going to remove that bumper sticker, right? Purge it of the impurities, take it on a car wash, and I'm going to take that Lamborghini, and for nothing else, I'm going to sell it and put the money to good use or what have you. Their refusal to be able to think this way is despicable. I know in the Marines, I believe it is, they talk about, in Special Forces, improvising. Okay? Taking the material that you have and putting it to good use. So why didn't society put me to good use? A guy, again, who's the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon, I was doing Algebra 2 in pre-kindergarten. Okay? I grew up hanging out with various people with various forms of intelligence. Why didn't they put me to good use? Why don't they put the immigrants to good use? Why do attractive women date scum who come together to not effectively use the human resources in the nation? Why are people so stubborn and unfair? Why do they refuse to come together for what is right? Why do they refuse to come together for my war on poverty plan? They're in various groups, right? They say our group doesn't allow us to. We're in a corporation and I'll lose my job because the corporation's run by eugenicists and they're not allowed to say that. They're in a government group. They say, hey, we're not supposed to help people like you who are blacklisted. Okay? Marginalized, blacklisted, disenfranchised as the son of two doctors, one a brain surgeon who's a humanitarian with nothing but pure and moral intentions for humanity. How did it come to this? Why don't individuals and groups transcend and rise to the occasion? Why don't we love each other? So what has happened here? People's refusal to pinpoint an order of worth has had catastrophic effects. And the closest thing to it, perhaps, and I'm not saying this just because I'm mulatto, is Bob Marley. Another closest thing to it is Obama. Bob Marley and Obama. See, the closest thing to it, was Obama. Okay, it's the closest thing to a large consensus of saying we want normal and not racial. We want normal and not, in the box. We want something outside of the box, and we want to do what's right. But Obama was not. He's a politician. He's not a Messiah. Bob Marley is a musician. He's not a Messiah. He spent his music career pointing to Haile Selassie, who is also not a Messiah. So people have the order of human worth wrong. When you buy platinum, if you were to buy platinum, wouldn't you make damn sure that it's platinum? Have it appraised to the best of your ability if you have any sense? Wouldn't you make the distinction between that and aluminum and bronze and gold and silver? Sterling silver, white gold, yellow gold? Wouldn't you make that distinction? Wouldn't you make the distinction between a diamond and a rock? So why don't you make the distinction in character and human worth, wisdom, maturity, discipline, heart, love, justice, righteousness, the moral warrior spirit? When you look at the Lamborghini, it's even a sports car. A sports car. One of the most expensive cars are sports cars. Some other ones like Bentley. For arrogant, rich, old-fashioned Europeans or something, that's what comes to mind. A Bentley. And vehicles like this. Why don't you make the distinction? Is not the hero greater than the arrogant, old money buffoon who refuses to govern correctly? Even in the end, after countless generations of catastrophic failures, they're still pushing a slave system. Except for it's occult, hidden. How hidden is it? There's wage slaves. There's human trafficking. There's prostitutes. People are slaves to their drug addiction, to their money addiction, to their sex addiction. They're slaves to the inaccurate, whatever the word is, definition of mental illness. They are slaves to their false definitions. They are slaves to their social norm fanaticism. When you write down everything that they're slaves to and who manipulates that and how easy it is for them to manipulate it, we look at marketing and propaganda and psychological operations. It doesn't take a genius to see that people are slaves. But why? How could this be? They talk about the Romans and the Greek slaves. And the slave trade in America, the transatlantic slave trade. We look at Nazi Germany and concentration camp. We look at Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. We look at Braveheart, Shaka Zulu, Bruce Lee and Chinese Connection, The Last Samurai. Why wouldn't they choose death over slavery? Romeo and Juliet chose death over not having love. What about if you didn't have love and you were a slave? Why don't people get these very obvious concepts? Why did they choose to conform to a Babylonian, a Neo-Babylonian, a Neo-Greco-Roman slave system? You're talking about the Jews being slaves in Egypt. To who? To those who didn't uphold the order of moral precision. Look at the timeline. The first dynasty kings were gone for a long time by the time the Jews were said to be enslaved in Egypt. And they even start off by saying that there was a fair pharaoh when Joseph was there, and eventually he died and a wicked pharaoh came about. Why don't people make these distinctions? When I was young, my entire youth, all through my 20s, no one clarified to me that there was a good Egyptian pharaoh in the Bible, because they still teach white supremacy in popular culture. They don't teach human worth. If you don't have a moral order, you have a racist order. That's how it is on this planet. They say, hey, let's do it by how much money you have, and white people and Jews and LGBT people have most of the money. The ones that do. Okay, the rich ones, right? They're disproportionately wealthy. Okay, they say, well, let's do it by how American you are. That's racist too. We'll do it by social norms that come down from old money through corporations. That's racist too. They're looking for a way to keep you using a scale of the old money racist white people, and people are eating it right up to the point where they've shunned the guy with the most logical argument for why he's the most righteous ever for nothing else. A scale of focused moral intensity, universal pinpointing moral precision, and focused righteousness as proven through martial arts strikes, his life philosophy, his deeds, and so on and so forth.